Chapter 4. The evening after the incident at the chapel, Reijou was hurrying about the small kitchen of the detached palace. However, she wasn't preparing food. A sweet, floral smell attracted the attention of a nearby maid, who sneaked up to peek. "My lady, what in the world?" Piles and piles of flowers covered the table. Reijou gave them a little awkward chuckle as she plucked the petals off wilting roses. She had asked Elsie and the other maids to buy up as many unsold bouquets as they could from florists across the city. "Sorry for the mess. I'll be sure to clean them up, don't worry." Sure, but that's not why I'm surprised." Reijou hadn't stopped with roses. There were orange gerberas and purple gentians. A mass of pink petals was already simmering on the stove. "Oh, are you going to dye something?" the maid asked, her face lighting up. Reijou smiled at her. "I can't tell you yet, but as soon as I'm finished, all of you will be the first to try it. Of course, I won't force you if you don't want to. I'd love to help," the astute maid answered. "I'm not sure with what yet, but I'll be happy to." "Thanks." The maid returned to work, surely wondering what Reijou could possibly be brewing in the pot. The girl seemed confident, but Reijou doubted she'd ever guess what the bottle sitting on the corner of the table contained. She began to clear up the leaves and stems. "Maybe I should let this simmer a bit longer. I'm all done with the petals now." Reijou sat down, rechecking a piece of paper containing all the information she had copied from various documents during a morning spent cooped up in the library. The population distribution for the imperial capital of Galkine. The shifts in economic conditions. The state of affairs in surrounding areas and information detailing merchants and tourists. She sank into thought. "Based on this, I've come up with a deal to offer Mr. Tully, but I'm not completely happy with it." She still had 5 days to go. Her samples should be finished by then, and the information she'd gathered should be enough to assure him of a potential profit, and to come up with a way for calculating interest rates and other such things. Although she was sure of her victory, she wasn't satisfied. All of this is publicly available information. She looked again at her writing. The fiancé of the crown prince should know so much more. Reijou felt that keenly while reading the documents. She knew that Arnold had amassed political power as a result of his various feats during the war 3 years prior. The first thing he'd done was allocate reparations from other countries to purchase products from rural areas for a huge lump sum. Although Galkine had won the war, the victory was only felt by an elite few. The soldiers who fought, the blacksmiths who forged their swords, and the apothecaries who had made medicines for the front lines had all lost their jobs. Many of them sought work in the city, and when there was none to be found, they lived in the slums. Meanwhile, the countryside had suffered from a labor shortage even during the war. There was no money to pay the wages of the men returning from battle, and the population continued to decline. Productivity in farming and fishing villages went down, heralding a huge spike in food prices nationwide. Arnold had been taking measures to prevent that. He used reparation funds to buy up crops and seafood. Once those industries were flush with cash, the jobless workers would begin to return to the countryside. According to the recent travel permit records Reijou had pored over, the strategy seemed to be working. The majority of permits had been granted to those traveling to the countryside to farm and for other similar reasons. People were returning home to find jobs. The supplies Arnold had bought up were offered to the destitute at subsidized prices, filling their bellies. He'd invested a huge chunk of his own wealth in his scheme, and to show for it he had Galkine's increased productivity and rising birth rate. That meant an increase in tax yields and morale. Reijou had learned all this solely from the documentation. This is the sort of thing you'd never learn from living outside of Galkine. The scene from the previous evening continued to play back in her mind. How Arnold had said, "You don't need to be resolute in becoming my wife." What did that even mean? She couldn't bring herself to ask him. The look on his face was too desolate and too familiar. That was exactly how he looked when he killed me. There were so many things she wanted to know, but she'd held her tongue as he walked away. All she could do was replay the night over and over, remembering how he had kissed her. Reijou flinched at the memory, pressing her forehead to the table. There wasn't any deep meaning in that. How could there be? She had to stop thinking about this. She had far more pressing matters to attend to. Reijou squeezed her eyes shut and stood up, giving her cheeks a light pat and shifting her focus back to what was important. First things first, on to the next step. I need to finish this. She took the pot off the stove, straining the boiled petals from the liquid, letting them cool down as she readied another pot. Once the petals were no longer scalding hot, she wrapped them in a cloth and wrung them out. Next, she picked up the glass bottle on the table. Inside was a clear, viscous liquid from the sap of a common tree. She mixed it together with the flower dye, taking care not to form bubbles. Once it was a uniform color, she poured the liquid back into the bottle, rocking it from side to settle it. That gave her a small vial of deep pink. Reijou opened another glass bottle, dipping a small prepared brush inside. The contents were a milky color, made by mixing the sap of various herbs. Carefully, she smoothed the mixture over her nails. On top of that, she painted on the pink color, making sure there were no bumps. 10 seconds later, the liquid began to feel hot. She waited several minutes, being careful not to do anything with her fingers. When she finally touched her nails, she found the lacquer glossy and hard. It set just as she was hoping. Perfect. Reijou gazed at her rose-colored nails with satisfaction. The hardened sap shone like gems on her fingertips. This was a substance Reijou had invented during her life as an apothecary. She'd used this concoction to strengthen the cracked nails of the injured. It was made of the sap of the common Kalini trees, mixed with 3 kinds of crushed herbs. The lacquer solidified in just a few minutes. I need to experiment with other flowers to make sure the colors come out and how well they harden, she was thinking to herself when Elsie appeared. My lady, I thought I told you to take a break. She had been checking on Reijou all day and was thoroughly displeased to find her still in the kitchen. I'll make you some tea, then you should sit down. She stopped, apparently having noticed Reijou's nails. Her eyes lit up like stars. They're so shiny, Reijou couldn't help but chuckle at her adorable squeal of excitement. You've come at a good time. She'd had a feeling Elsie would like this. She instructed Elsie to wash her hands thoroughly and sit down across the table from her. After making sure that Elsie didn't have any open cuts or wounds, Reijou went to work. She dipped the brush into the milky white liquid, explaining how it worked as she painted Elsie's nails. In a country far to the east, they have a culture of dyeing their nails with flowers. If we use this strengthening ointment for your nails below the pigment, the dye should last for a while, even with your cleaning duties. Curious, Elsie asked, do you mean it makes your nails stronger? Mine break so easily, this should help with that. But the best remedy for brittle nails is to eat balanced meals rich in plenty of meat, fish, and legumes. Nails are a part of your skin. What's good for your skin is good for your nails. Meat, fish, and legumes, Elsie muttered. I'll remember that. My family is poor, but I have my wages now. You mentioned your family has fallen on hard times. Elsie nodded. Even when we do buy meat and vegetables, it's only enough to feed my younger brother and sister. Reijou had learned about Elsie's family back before Elsie was her maid, when she'd mentioned why she needed this job so badly. It was all for their sake. I know the capital city contains slums. One of the knights from our journey mentioned it after the bandit attack. He told me he was from a poor district. Reijou painted more base coat onto Elsie's nails. Doubtless Arnold's measures aren't enough to save everyone. His policies have been so unpopular, some people have tried to block them. Having finished the base coat, Reijou brought out the dyed sap polish. Elsie was transfixed, letting out a little coo of admiration as she watched. It's so beautiful. I've never seen anything so glossy and pretty. Elsie liked dressing up. She seemed to enjoy choosing Reijou's gowns and doing her hair. She was so deft with her hands that she'd likely be excellent at applying polish on her own. Reijou said, I only have pink right now, but tell me what your favorite color is. I'll give you the bottle when it's finished. Oh no, I couldn't possibly accept something so lovely. On the contrary, Reijou said. You should most certainly accept. For my sake too. Seeing all of you wear my creation will make me happy. My lady, Reijou let out a breath of relief as she finished with Elsie's right hand. Mistakes with the polish were hard to fix. What color would you like? We could do the pale blue of forget-me-nots or yellow of sunflowers. There's also red, orange, pink, or purple. Your skin is so pale, I'm sure any color would look good on you. Elsie gazed at Reijou in wonder. Oh, tears welled in her eyes. Elsie, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Reijou panicked a little. Did she have a cut that Reijou had missed? It wouldn't be good for the liquid to seep in. Elsie shook her head. No, it's just, she blinked away her tears, stemming the drip of the pearl-like droplets. I've never worn something so pretty before. She couldn't seem to hold herself back. My siblings always came first. Whatever money we got a hold of was spent on essentials. Her quiet voice was strangled down to a whisper. I've never had anything to dress my hair, and my clothes have always been worn hand-me-downs from the boys. This maid's uniform is the first thing I've had that's mine. Reijou remembered just how upset Elsie had been over her dress getting stained at their first meeting. I was overjoyed to officially receive this uniform when you took me into your employ. I never thought I'd actually be allowed something so beautiful of my own. Elsie wiped her tears away with the back of her hand. I'm happy, my lady. I promise. I don't even know how to tell you how happy. Oh, Elsie, Reijou gently patted the girl's head. I'm so happy, Elsie sobbed louder. Right then, Reijou understood what it meant that all her maids were working for their families' sakes. No doubt they were like Elsie, pushing aside their dreams and aspirations. Thanks to the insights from my current life, I now know what this business deal with Area has been lacking. On the day of Reijou's deadline, Tully and 4 other managers assembled in the main palace's parlor. All of them were people she remembered fondly from her previous lives. She sat across from them, outlining her business idea. Women use this product to decorate their nails. Reijou gestured to the 7 maids arrayed behind her. They each wore different colors of polish, from pink to bright blue to light green, all glossy and vibrant. I have written down a brief summary of Galkeen's economic situation. Many common families have money to spend, but beauty products are very dear. Gowns and jewels are out of their reach, but my polish won't be. She presented the document to Tully. The names of the ingredients were redacted, but she'd included their individual costs and the retail price for the finished products. Pulling out another document, she said, "This is a transcript of visitors to the city. As you can see, many are men in the prime of their lives." Tully squinted down at the paper. "Right you are. And I presume these fellows have homes and families to return to. My product will make the perfect gift," Reijou assured him. The bottles are small and compact. That meant they would be easy to distribute abroad as well. Perfect for a company like Area, which made most of its sales in storefronts. So what do you think, mister? Tully didn't take his eyes off Reijou as he spoke to his managers. Chester, Melvin, Neil, Russell. What are your thoughts? In turn, each offered his opinion. I think it's sound. I don't know if I trust her cost analysis, but I foresee no problems with mass production. A bottle would sell for about 2,000 gold. That'd be quite the profit. She must be using flowers for the dyes. If they are rare or regional, then we'll need to add an import tax for other countries. TCH. Uncouth, the lot of you. Tully pressed his brow and shrugged in exasperation. Is it only about cost and profits to you? Then what do you think, sir? Do I have to spell it out? We need to go to the consumer. Tully turned his customer service smile on the girls arrayed behind Reijou. My dears, what are your opinions on your nails? Oh, Tully had a devilish smile, and as he turned it on her maids, Reijou solemnly prayed that all of them could see through it, and every other good-for-nothing man who'd try the same, for that matter. The girls hesitated, a bit flushed, then spoke cautiously. We have to look at our hands a lot while we work. It helps my morale being able to look down and see such pretty nails. I feel like they're helping me do a better job. Another maid giggled. I know that's silly, but it's hard to paint both hands on our own, so we help each other. It's fun. We were even talking about how we'd like to try our hand at doing little designs when we get a bit better at it. Elsie, ever shy, added her opinion last. I love it. It makes me so happy. Her nails were a coral red from the gerberas. When Reijou had asked what shade she wanted, Elsie didn't even hesitate in answering, "The same as your hair, my lady." "See, what did I tell you?" Tully leaned back in his chair. "The looks on their faces alone tell me this product will be a hit, production costs be damned. Does that mean Lady Reijou passes your test, boss?" Tully's eyes took on a dangerous glint. "Now that's a completely different question." The maids murmured among one another, confused at the sudden change in his demeanor. Tully picked up the documents Reijou had laid on the table, glancing back over them. Production cost involves an array of factors, not just the price of ingredients or whether it can be mass-produced. "Yeah, that's true," one of his men agreed. "The demand for this product will be high. It's unique. If I'd invented this, I would have jacked up the price and sold it to aristocrats." Tully watched Reijou with an openly searching gaze. "I'm sure the thought occurred to you, my lady. So my question is, what are your motives?" Reijou smiled demurely. He'd seen through her again. "Mr. Tully, since you find my product so pleasing, could we get down to business?" "Down to business?" asked one of Tully's men. "Weren't we already doing that?" Reijou and Tully ignored the confused staff members, squaring off across the table. "Shall we open the negotiations?" she pressed. The maids took their leave. The only people remaining were Reijou, the trading company representatives, and Reijou's guards. The air was tense. Tully's staff exchanged uncomfortable looks. "With your permission, I'll start off with some advice." Tully raised a hand with a self-deprecating grin, perhaps to keep Reijou from taking it personally. "Do you really want to discuss this further? This is a marvelous product. If you agree to my proposed strategy of putting this on the market as a luxury product for the rich, I'd pass you in an instant. I really do." Reijou leveled her gaze at him. "The discussion will continue, Mr. Tully, then please say your piece." Reijou passed another document to Tully. "This is a copy of a recently instated policy. 3 years ago, Galkeen established a nationwide minimum wage." "Interesting." Tully glanced over the document. "I see now. Employers must pay their employees at least the stated amount, no matter who they are, lest they break the law. Ever since this policy was passed," Reijou went on, "deaths by overwork have gone down, as has poverty. It's easier to make a steady income. Quite frankly, this is the policy that has jump-started Galkeen's economy. However, the only people benefiting from this are people with jobs," Tully said, catching on. "Arnold's law increased workers' income. But because of that, the burden of the higher wages was placed on their employers. So while overall income had increased, and some people had comfortable hours and food on the table, employment was down. The ones who couldn't find jobs were still starving. Next, I would like you to direct your attention to this document." Reijou showed him the next sheet of paper. "Supplies for the ingredients and manufacturing workshops. This is all the information you need for mass production, including channels of distribution. Your manufacturing costs will be low. But this does not include the cost of labor." "Oh dear." Tully bent forward and propped his elbow on his knee. "I think I know where you're heading, but let me ask anyway. What do you want me to do? Employ from poor areas who are at their wits' end, the ones hit worst by deprivation?" Reijou straightened up. "I will give you the recipe if, and only if, you agree to this condition." The gleam in Tully's eye was snuffed out in an instant. "What a noble request." He gave a deep sigh. "I'm disappointed in you, Missy." "Kind Tully," snapped one of the guards. "Watch your tongue. You will address the crown princess by her title." "No, it's all right." Reijou called off the loyal knights and kept her eyes on Tully. "I believe that even with this proposal, this product will bring in sufficient profits. It is, admittedly, less than you'd make selling it as a luxury good. Now. Sufficient isn't enough for greedy merchants like me. If you want to run a charity, go talk to a priest." Reijou had been expecting this reaction. Tully wasn't a cruel man, but he appreciated the aesthetics of a good deal. "I'm not asking you to run a charity, I'm asking you to strike a bargain." "What?" Tully frowned. His other staff gave her confused looks too. "A long time ago, a man told me that the very best merchants choose their own customers." The man who had told her that in the past had given her a very shrewd look. He was doing that now. Reijou didn't let it trip her up. A few days ago, I learned of a recent allocation of funds to the poor, a large stimulus post-war. I know about that, yes, Tully said. I believe it was a policy introduced by the Crown Prince. Even us cutthroats can appreciate a decree meant to save people and help a country flourish. Exactly. The citizens would have starved without those measures. And they will again if the royal family and nobility think only of lining their own pockets. During her life as a merchant, Reijou had traveled to many different places. Galkeen's allies in the war had emerged victorious as well, but not nearly as well off. Some of them were even worse off than countries on the losing side. When spending goes down, the economy stagnates. When that happens, workers have nowhere to work and grow poor again. If the cycle continues, even the wealthiest families would be destined for collapse. They live off the taxes their citizens provide, after all. Tully gave a dry laugh. You're trying to tell me that a country can't become rich if they hoard all their wealth in one place. That wealth should be redistributed. No, I prefer to think of it in a different way, Reijou said, and then she smiled. I dare say you'd agree. Let us not choose our customers, but rather create our customers with our very own hands. Tully sucked in a breath, his eyes widening. She had him now. Most merchants don't see those in poverty as potential customers, right? They can't afford anything besides basic necessities, after all. Elsie had told Reijou exactly that the other day. But I'd like you to imagine for a moment, what would the market look like if all those people found jobs tomorrow and they no longer had to scrape by? All of those people would become potential customers. By increasing your customer base, you'll sell even more than before. That kind of cycle is self-sustaining. Reijou drew a circle in the air with her index finger, and her smile grew. That, in turn, would mean great things for the products that the area trading company has to offer, would it not? By expanding your customer base, your company will be raking in the highest profits possible. Tully, who had been eyeing her coldly, suddenly burst into a full belly laugh. I like it. I like it a lot. You're not suggesting I pick my customers so much as raise them from the ground up. The profits may be modest at first, but the growth will be exponential. As a result, Galkeen's revenue will increase as well. And as I am the future empress, this concerns me. She'd said it quite bluntly, but she was being honest. At first, Reijou had looked at her deal from the point of view of a merchant. She'd operated from the standpoint that her task was to design a product with a high profit yield. However, once she learned of the policy Arnold had put into place, she'd had doubts about her plan. After hearing Elsie's feelings, she'd realized how thoughtless she had been. Reijou shouldn't be thinking as a merchant, but as a crown princess. Profits and prosperity came from a country's people. And to prosper, to thrive, people needed more than just food and shelter. They had to live without throwing away their dreams and aspirations. They needed hope. I doubt this is ideal for you, Reijou said. But it's all I can offer at this time. Actually, I think this is a pretty good plan. You're excellent at picking up on my own thoughts and beliefs. I've rather enjoyed this. Tully's look of glazed boredom had become one of delight. However, Miss Reijou, you've still got much to learn. She recognized that smile. It was how he'd look at her back in her first life whenever she made a mistake. Remember what I told you before. You conduct yourself too earnestly, you're transparent. Someone unscrupulous could take advantage of that. I appreciate the warning, Reijou said. I haven't the faintest idea why, but clearly you want me in my company. And I'm planning on using you to the full extent of my ability. Tully's people gave him more exasperated looks. Come on, boss. This is the crown princess you're talking to here. Quit it, his lips curled, sly and savoring. So, what will you do? I can poke 100 holes in this deal you're offering me. I bet you'd come up with something even better if I reject it. Reijou closed her eyes for a breath. Oh, and I suppose you won't allow me to take my business elsewhere. See, you do understand me. Even though we've only spoken a few times, I wanted to avoid this, but you've left me little choice. Reijou turned over her final document. What have you got for me this? Tully's eyes went wide and his back straightened. What is it, boss? Shock was written all over his face. His aloof affectation evaporated, panic threading his voice. Miss Reijou, how the hell do you know about this? Apologies. I admit I took the liberty of investigating you in my own way. The truth was that Reijou had seen it with her very own eyes, but she couldn't say that. As I have written here, I am currently in the process of cultivating some rare herbs. Together, they can be used to make a medicine that hails from the country of Reijou to the east. The knights who accompanied Reijou to her work in the garden gave her wondering looks. Reijou nodded gravely. Mr. Tully, do you recognize the symptoms of this disease? This is what area is, he trailed off. Reijou knew Area Tully very well. She was Kind Tully's only living family member. Right about now, she would be a bright and happy 10-year-old girl. Her character was slightly more scrupulous than her older brothers, but she was no less curious. Fitting for the namesake of the trading company. He loved her dearly, and that was why he was gathering information from every corner of the world. Exactly. This medicine will cure your sister's disease. Area had struggled with respiratory infections since she was very young. Reijou had seen it happen in her previous lives. Her older brother traveled the world, peddling his wares as he searched for a way to cure her. Tully's breaths were ragged, his voice hoarse. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised that you know of Area's illness. I speak to doctors wherever I go. But how do you know about herbal medicine from Reijou? The eastern country of Reijou had its own tradition of herbalism that went back centuries. Doctors from all over the world traveled there hoping to gain their knowledge, but it was fiercely guarded. Having spent a life working for Tully, Reijou knew he was among one of the supplicants denied access. The apothecary who served my family came from Reijou. She taught me herbalism. That specifically was a lie, but Reijou did know an herbalist from Reijou. Before meeting her, Reijou had been entirely self-taught. Her education went in bounds after that. One of the things she'd learned was the medicine she was offering Tully now. I did a little bit of digging into Miss Area's symptoms. If she takes this medicine for a year, she will make a full recovery. Why should I believe you? Tully snorted. You're not a doctor or an apothecary. Reijou had anticipated this, so she'd taken measures a week ago. She turned her attention to Tully's staff. Gentlemen, what do you think? You've already had a sample. Tully's men looked momentarily shocked. Do you mean the stuff we took the morning after you drank us under the table? Yes, that's what I'm referring to. The night 1 week prior, when she'd followed his men to the inn and challenged them, knowing she would be the only one sitting sober when Tully arrived. On her way out, she had given Tully packets of medicine, saying, when your employees wake up tomorrow, be sure to give them this. It was, of course, a hangover cure. Well, when I woke up, I felt pretty bad, but the medicine helped for sure. Reijou nodded. It has a number of effects. It swiftly expels alcohol from your blood and reduces inflammation in the stomach. I made it myself. You did. Tully's staff stared at her with matched looks of shocked admiration. Reijou hadn't chosen a drinking game by chance. By giving them an opportunity to try her medicine in advance, she'd hoped to increase her credibility in Tully's eyes. To convince him to take a chance on her. I admit I let myself slip into old habits back then, orchestrating things as I did. I fully admit my guilt. She turned back to Tully. You're right in the end. I can't prove to you this medicine will work. But isn't a little hope better than no hope at all? Tully was silent, pressing a hand against his brow. Become a merchant who can pick their clients. Offer values and products that can't be found with anyone else. That's what I say to my employees. Yes, I know. She had taken his lessons to heart. Tully wore an ugly grin. But now the tables are turned, sweetheart, Mr. Tully, we were just bargaining whether I would pick you. But right now you're the one in the position to pick me. Tully sat up tall, staring intensely at her. He was a prideful man, but he'd throw everything away for the sake of his beloved sister, even for an unsure bet. He was attempting to humble himself before Reijou. Please, I'll give you everything I own if that's what it'll take. So please give me. I think you've misunderstood my intentions here, Reijou interrupted. I will give you the medicine's recipe for free. What? Tully looked at her with disbelief. And of course, I will give you the herbs required to make it. There need not be any contracts or negotiations involved, don't worry about that at all. Are you kidding me? I was just slithering out of our deal. You're telling me this isn't your trump card? I am using it as a trump card, Reijou said. But I would never stoop so low as to hold your sister's health hostage. Tully blinked, thrown completely off as she went on. There is, however, something I would like you to understand. Everyone in the slums cares just as much for their families as you do for yours. There are countless people out there sacrificing their own dreams to ensure that their own younger siblings don't end up sick or malnourished. Reijou clenched both fists as she recalled her conversation with Elsie. I believe that it is the country's duty to assist them, but I am just a princess. I am powerless to change anything. What I propose to you is my counter-method, however crude. If she were Tully, she would have come up with far broader ventures. If she were Arnold, she'd be able to enact political change. But she was just Princess Reijou, nearly, anyway, with barely any influence to speak of. I do not see this as turning the tables on you, mister. Tully, Reijou stood and offered him a deep bow. I simply ask you to consider what I've said. Silence stretched inside the parlor. Reijou braced herself to be told how naive she was. If this were her previous life as his underling, he never would have allowed her to stake out on her own. Tully stood from his chair. You shouldn't be the one bowing to me, my lady. He dropped to his knees on the floor. Mr. Tully, what are you? I won't insult you by asking you to forgive my insolence. He blew out a breath. It seems that I am the one who has much to learn. There's truly no need. Reijou found the sight of her former boss genuflecting to her to be awkward in the extreme. A merchant's job is to enrich everyone, Tully said, stubbornly staying on his knees. And by everyone, I mean the merchant who receives the money, the artisan who makes the product, even the customer who felt the urge to spend their money on something they wanted. Somehow, while I was running my mouth, I managed to forget that. Reijou was shocked by his words. I never considered poor citizens as customers. To be frank, I never considered them at all. Never gave them a second thought. But you're right, many children are just like my sister. He looked up at Reijou. Your deal to enrich the many rather than the few is admirable and valuable. My sister's medicine aside, I'm ashamed of my own selfish arrogance. Does that mean, he nodded and with all the reverence of a knight pledging himself to his lord said, I swear it on my name as kind Tully, the area trading company will do business with you, my lady, in whatever way you see fit. A wave of relief swept over Reijou, so intense it left her feeling weak. Thank you. Reijou was pleased by how things ended, and she stayed behind in the parlor after Tully and his staff left, thinking. I've secured a route for stockpiling goods. I sure am glad I managed to develop a prototype in time. Also, my herb garden is thriving, and the maids are progressing in their studies. It's time to begin the next steps. Suddenly, she felt a throbbing pain in her forehead. The medicine's worn off, I see. Taking care of the field, teaching the maids, making ingredients, working on developing the product. She didn't have nearly enough hours in the day, and she'd been pushing herself too hard. She'd spent all the previous night preparing for today's negotiation, foregoing sleep, stretching her body to its limit. I don't have the endurance built up for this lifestyle. She performed a self-examination, making sure she didn't have a cold she could spread, and concluded it was probably just exhaustion. She'd recover with rest. But there's one last thing I need to finish up, she thought as her guards returned from escorting Tully out. We apologize for keeping you waiting, my lady. We shall escort you back to your chambers now. Reijou smiled, trying to mask her fatigue. Thank you, my lady. Are you well? Reijou blinked. Her vision wavered. With her medicine wearing off, she suddenly found herself unable to rise from her chair. Don't fret. Just would someone summon Elsie for me? Sensing that something was wrong, a guard made haste to do her bidding. This way, sir. Reijou's guard guided Oliver, the crown prince's attendant, to the parlor. How is her condition? She looked pale, as if just sitting up was difficult for her. My partner Camel is looking after her right now. Who else knows of this? Oliver demanded. Lady Reijou's maid, at her request. No one else? Good. Arnold's standing orders were that any unforeseen circumstances involving Reijou should be dealt with discreetly, with as few people involved as possible, to avoid rumors spreading throughout the imperial palace. Especially with Prince Theodore sticking his nose in, Oliver thought. What a mess! They needed to move Reijou stealthily and summon a trusted doctor. Oliver was working out the logistics of this as they arrived in the parlor. Lady Reijou, how are? Oliver's voice died in his throat. The guard's eyes went wide as he looked into the room. The parlor was empty. Camille, Elsie, and the unconscious Reijou were gone. Sir, what do we do? What do we? Oliver put a placating hand on the guard's arm. I will report to His Highness at once. Do nothing until we know his orders. That evening, Prince Theodore strolled leisurely through the capital. He had snuck out of the castle grounds, as was his habit, with only a single guard. He wore a robe with a low hood and at a glance would never have been mistaken for royalty. The disguise was probably overkill, as only the emperor ever appeared in public. Very few citizens would know the young prince. He only needed to hide his face to slip in and out of the palace grounds. Theodore turned into a narrow alley, a tight squeeze for the large-framed guard following behind. This was the sort of road people avoided even during the day. The light of Theodore's lantern illuminated the shabby line of houses. He located the only one with lights on inside, walking up to knock on the door. A voice called out in response, and Theodore's guard stepped forward to open the door. Theodore walked in with a wave of greeting. An elderly man with a hunch bowed deeply to him. We have been awaiting your arrival, Your Highness. Theodore smiled, sitting down in a nearby chair. Dominic, it's been days. I heard that Lena had her child. What wonderful news. All thanks to your support, Your Highness. Don't be so humble. I help out your people in the slums, and you return the favor. It's a reciprocal relationship. Theodore glanced meditatively at the ground. I hear you have something for me. A certain would-be crown princess. Your wish is our command, Your Highness. The palace was continuing the pretense that all was well, but Arnold's knights, aside from his personal guard, were unaccounted for. No doubt they were out searching. Even now my brother acts calm, but all the while he scrambles frantically for his missing fiancée. What would you have us do with the girl? Dominic asked. We could kill her, of course, or sell her off. Your Highness's wish is our command. Such reliable service. How novel. Theodore crossed his legs, propping his elbow on his knee so he could rest his chin in his hand. There's no rush. I need to congratulate you all on your flawlessly executed plan. I know it must have been difficult, grabbing her from her own palace drawing room. His eyes searched out two figures standing in the shadows. Elsie, Camille. Thank you for your hard work, of course, Your Highness. The petite girl and the broad knight bowed as one. Theodore had known Elsie, Lady Reijou's maid, and Camille, one of her guards, for a very long time. The two of them were born and bred in the slums, growing up hungry. I wasn't expecting a chance so soon, said Elsie. She worked herself to the point of collapse, so it was the perfect opportunity to steal her away. A pause. I have already searched her person, Camille said. She's unarmed, carrying nothing that would aid her in escape. Such work ethic. Theodore glanced at the maid. Elsie, your complexion has improved so much. I'm glad you've been eating better. It's all thanks to you, Your Highness. You're the one who referred me for the job. No need to thank me. It was the perfect opportunity to get one of my supporters close to my brother's fiancée, after all. You did an admirable job winning Reijou's trust. I'm appreciative beyond words. Theodore turned his attention to the knight. Camille, you've had your work cut out for you too. My future sister-in-law is such a busy bee, nothing I couldn't handle. Acting as her guard was the perfect cover. Theodore laughed. You weren't so happy about it when my brother chose you for his personal guard and flatly refused when I asked for you instead, he said, referring to an incident from a few years ago. Theodore's terrific fuss at not being given his way was known far and wide, but the fact that the knight in question was one he'd brought up from the slums himself was not. Who knew that having one of mine in my brother's faction would be so useful? Theodore took out a leather bag full of gold coins and tossed it to them. Elsie and Camel bowed as they accepted their payment. Thank you for everything thus far, Theodore said as he let himself out into the fetid alley. Keep up the good work. On his way back through the dark alley, a raggedly dressed boy scampered up. Theo, hey Wim. How's the protection detail? Good. I'm gonna keep Anna safe until Mom gets home from work. Theodore ruffled the boy's hair, uncaring that it was matted and filthy. What a good big brother you are. But it's late enough that the mission should probably continue with the two of you tucked in for the night. What? But I want to stay up and see Mom when she gets home, Wim wailed. It's important for big brothers to make sure their little sisters get enough rest, right? The boy's face scrunched as he thought it over before he nodded. Okay. If you say so, then I'll continue my duties from bed. Good night, Theo, good night. Sweet dreams. Theodore watched until the boy was out of sight. He shook his head ruefully. A big brother's job, eh? As if my brother would have ever done that for me. Theodore's guard only responded with, Your Highness. At this, Theodore just shrugged. He'd first visited these slums when he was very young, still holding hands with his mother. She'd done charity work here, in the imperial capital's refuse pile, where people who didn't matter were swallowed whole by debt and poverty. Brother sees me the same way he does the people who live here. He pretends to care because he can't make me go away, but deep down, he doesn't give a damn. That's all I am to him. A duty. Theodore kept his eyes on the pavement. But now I've launched my counterattack, dear brother. I wonder how long I'll have to wait for you to lavish me with your attention. In a small, dingy back room, Reijou fought to stay conscious. As far as she could tell, she'd been brought to the outskirts of the capital and locked away in what appeared to be a storage room. There was a window, but she was on the 3rd floor. She heard a few people moving on the other side of the door, most likely posted guards. Reijou sat in one corner, fighting her wavering vision, sluggish body, and aching head. At long last, a distraction arrived. Hey, sister. How does it feel knowing you've been betrayed by your maid and guard? Prince Theodore, Reijou acknowledged, letting out a sigh. At last, the person she'd been waiting for made his entrance. Theodore cheerfully smiled down at her from the door. So sad, and after you trained that girl so lovingly. Elsie told me all about your scheme to get the maids doing their jobs faster. Even the officials are talking about you and your system. Apparently, it's going to fix the palace's staffing problem. My brother's brilliant bride, here to solve all his administrative issues. The smile dropped off his beautiful face. You're valuable to him. Her thoughts hazy, Reijou managed to ask, Why do this? To make my brother angry, of course. That's it. Theodore's voice was unwavering as he spoke. A skilled knight. Brilliant attendants. A bride who's reforming the palace. My brother sees value in excellence and nothing else. I am so far beneath his notice that he doesn't even bother to hate me. I decided to change that. I want him to loathe me down to his core. Reijou realized something then. Until now, she'd been operating under the assumption that Theodore schemed to undermine his brother because he disliked him. She'd made a terrible error. My brother doesn't even look at me, you know, Theodore said, chuckling. No matter what I do, he won't give me the time of day. He only bothered to acknowledge I was alive when I approached you. I'd far rather be looked at as an annoyance than nothing at all. Theodore's whole body was quivering, not out of fear but excitement. While he's mad at me, he's thinking of me. It's such a relief. Knowing that he considers me, even a little. Reijou watched his fuzzy figure from her seat on the floor as he continued to laugh. Fighting through her nausea and headache, Reijou smiled at him. You're lying, what? Theodore's face twisted so briefly that Reijou would have missed it if she hadn't been watching closely. You're just angry I captured you. It's not very becoming, sister. Then won't you deign to tell your poor defenseless hostage why the two of you hate each other so very much? It's none of your business. You made it my business, Reijou said, when you dragged me into your feud. Theodore stuck out his lip petulantly, like a child. Fine. Whatever. Remember how I told you my brother killed our mother? Well, he did it because she tried to kill him first. Reijou recalled the scars on the nape of Arnold's neck, numerous and at least a decade old. She hated my brother as much as she hated my father. And brother hated her in return. He dreamed of ending her life. Reijou listened in silence. I bet he'll kill father someday too. And when he does, being crown prince won't save him, he'll be a traitor and they'll execute him. There will be no escape. Theodore's voice was light, unknowing of the prescience of his joke. Our family is a mess because our father treats us like objects. Movable game pieces. And because my brother has severed all contact with his siblings, my sisters live elsewhere on his orders. Why did Prince Arnold hate your mother so much he wanted to kill her? Theodore shrugged. I assume it's because she tried to kill him first. It's only normal to loathe someone like that. Reijou had thought he'd answer that way, but she wasn't sure she agreed. To her eyes, Arnold wouldn't hold a grudge like that or swear a vendetta. But trying to sort any of this out right now was impossible. She was too ill to even think. And now you know. Satisfied, yes. Very. Reijou mustered all her strength to smile at Theodore. You want to be close with Prince Arnold. What? Theodore's blue eyes, so like his brother's, went wide as saucers. You spoke about Arnold differently this time. When you told me about him in the chapel, you made him out to be a monster. Have you lost your mind? Theodore turned his back on Reijou. Enough of this nonsense. I'm going to go play with my brother now, so you be a good girl while I'm gone. I've posted guards at the door. You won't get far if you try to escape. Bye. He shut the door behind him, throwing the lock. After his footsteps faded away, Reijou could still hear the presence of people outside in the hall. She let out a deep sigh and turned to a box in the corner of the room, drawing out thick winter curtains. Delighted, she laid them on the floor and curled up on top of them. Not luxurious by any stretch, but still far more comfortable than sleeping rough when she was a knight. And more importantly, at last I can sleep. She'd been fighting to stay awake before Theodore arrived. Now that they'd spoken, she had no reason to bother. The headache and nausea were bad enough, but above all else she was tired. So tired her whole body ached. Reijou closed her eyes and fell asleep for just over an hour. It was a short nap, but it refreshed her mind. She hadn't completely recovered, of course, but she felt much better than she had before she fainted. As she stirred, she yawned. I think I still have, yes. She pulled out a hidden vial of medicine, enduring its bitter taste as she gulped it down. It was a temporary measure, but once it kicked in, she'd have more options open to her. Next, she smoothly rolled up the hem of her dress, retrieving the dagger she had fastened to her thigh with a ribbon. This is a good quality knife. Elsie brought it to me from the slums. Prince Theodore must be their supplier. Reijou pulled 2 gold hairpins from her hair. Accessories on most days, lockpicks on special occasions. I'll have to thank Elsie and Camel for their help later. They had, after all, been the ones to supply her the information on Theodore. Dagger and her makeshift lockpicks in hand, Reijou stood up. She'd confirmed before Theodore's arrival that the lock had been tampered with, destroyed from the inside. Normally, that would mean the door couldn't be opened from here, but Reijou could deal with that. I think it should be around here. She knelt before the door, locating a small pinhole underneath the doorknob, a fail-safe in case the internal lock was broken. As she probed around with the golden pins, she went over her next moves. I hope Elsie and Camel are okay. They did just betray Prince Theodore, and the people around here adore him. Her maid had been working for Theodore all along. Reijou had realized the possibility a few days ago when she'd received his letter. The false missive had been slid in under the crack of her door, which could only be done by someone with permission to enter the detached wing. At present, only Reijou, her maids, and her guards had that. The night Arnold visited her, word had spread quickly. Clearly, comings and goings were watched, and Reijou learned that no one unknown had been seen, which meant the person who delivered the letter was a maid or a knight. The knights were unlikely. They had been with her when the letter was dropped off. That only left a maid. Perhaps Theodore hadn't bothered to explain himself, just given the order. He had also most likely ordered silence, no mention at all that he had ever drafted a letter to the crown princess. Reluctantly, Reijou began investigating her maids during the hours she spent making the nail polish. She looked at their backgrounds, searching for criminal records of anyone close to them. Among her maids, just one of them had any sort of shady history. Elsie. All the new maids were from poor families, but Elsie was the only one who had grown up in the slums. Her character reference for her job had been offered by a church in the district. Nothing so strange in a poor girl being sponsored by a charity, but something about it still felt off to Reijou. She needed answers, she needed proof. Thus, she'd ask the knights to summon her when she felt unwell. This would be the moment Elsie would show her hand. But the second Elsie came into the parlor, she burst into tears, saying, "Please don't worry, my lady. I'll protect you no matter what happens, I promise. I promise." Her small body trembled as she resolved herself to betray her patron. What Reijou had not been anticipating was a knight to say much the same thing. "Lady Reijou, I swear I will protect you as well. I was truly touched by your plan to help the slums. Elsie and I will deliver you to a doctor." He was one of the knights who had been paralyzed by poison during the bandit attack on their journey to Galkeen. Reijou knew from Arnold that he was from the slums and that he had struggled night and day to become a knight. "Elsie, I don't care what kind of punishment he might inflict on us, we shall save Lady Reijou." "Yes. Stay here, my lady." No, wait. I have a request," Reijou cut in. "If Prince Theodore has ordered you to do something to me, I want you to do it." "Obey him, why?" they asked in tandem. Their guilty shock told Reijou everything she needed to know. "Were you given any instructions, Elsie? We were ordered to watch for a chance to take you captive without any harm coming to you." A strange order, Reijou thought then. "I'm so sorry, my lady." "Punish me any way you see fit, my lady." "I cannot say the same for myself, but Elsie has done no wrong. Due to her situation at home, she cannot afford to disobey Prince Theodore's commands." Camel wore a pained look on his face. "Prince Theodore personally supports the slums, and everyone who lives there would likely do whatever it was he asked of them. To go against his orders is to go against the interests of your own friends and family. You'd be shunned." "Elsie has nowhere to go, but Camel, that goes for you as well," Elsie cried. "I'm a knight, I no longer live in that district. And obeying this particular order would be a serious crime against our future princess." Reijou listened to their exchange. "We should continue this conversation later. For now, let's go. Where? To imprison me." Like Prince Theodore ordered, Elsie and Camel stared at her. Blinking against her headache, Reijou turned over a paper she had used during her negotiations with Tully and wrote, "I have gone to continue a discussion we began in the chapel." Arnold was the only one who could interpret this. It had only been a week ago, and it would still be fresh in his memory. After that, Elsie and Camel snuck Reijou out of the palace and locked her up in this building on the outskirts. "Prince Arnold should know from that letter that I left the palace of my own free will. Meanwhile, Prince Theodore believes he's successfully captured me. Neither of them will find fault with Elsie or Camel." Back in the present, she felt one of the hairpins come up against something heavy. She flipped it up and heard a click. Reijou stood, easing the door open, pausing to listen to the men talking on the other side. Does one noblewoman really merit this heavy guard? It's Prince Theodore's orders, but surely 3 of us would suffice. Reijou steadied her breathing, taking care so that the men wouldn't notice her. That lady knows how to use a sword. I think Prince Theo's more concerned about us than her. She can't do anything through a locked door. There's 5 of us here, 6 on the 2nd floor, and 10 more posted outside. No. That's way too many people if you og. Reijou threw the door open and kicked the man behind the knees. The man lost his balance, falling just as Reijou swung her sheathed dagger against his neck. With a short grunt, the man collapsed, unconscious. Wow, what's going on? Hey, the woman got out, but that's impossible. We locked, shut up and grab her. He ordered us to be gentle, but we have no choice, we gotta tie her up. Reijou bent back and grabbed the hand grasping for her collar. She jabbed an elbow into the pit of the guard's stomach. He let out a croak like a dying frog, staggering back several steps. Ergo weak. Reijou analyzed her own strike and took a step back to gain some ground. Her current body simply wasn't strong enough. Any martial arts she did would have to use the enemy's speed and power against them. Emboldened by her hesitation, the men drew their swords. Quite an escalation, considering she'd kept hers sheathed. "Let me pass," she said. "Be careful," one of the guards warned. "This lady's tougher than she looks, don't be stupid," snapped another. "It's 4 against 1. She can't fight us all at once." Reijou's request was polite, but they appeared unwilling to accede to it. On the contrary, they were planning a coordinated attack. A stupid strategy in such a narrow hallway. Reijou stood at the ready, parrying a swing from her right. He was being incautious, and a hit in just the right place unarmed him, his sword flying and sinking into the wood of the door. The man was overcome with shock. Reijou used that opening to hit him with the pommel of her dagger. Arg! Reijou pushed him away, dodging the other 3. She waited for an opening and drove herself against the man's chests, slicing down his face with her still-sheathed dagger. The area between the eyebrows was a tender spot. A strong hit there could kill a man, but Reijou didn't need to worry about that with her current musculature. The guard didn't even scream before he thumped to the ground. What the hell is going on? She's just some noblewoman with a couple of moves. How dare you make fools of us? No sooner had she dodged one man's swing than another blade came at her from the other side. Dual wielding. She blocked the blow with her dagger, her hand going numb, but it was nothing compared to Arnold's attack. Without a moment's delay, Reijou drew back her dagger, pivoting adroitly, putting the force from the rotation into her kick. Gah! She slammed the heel of her shoe into the man's face. "This can't be happening." The final man's voice trembled as he faced her. Reijou paid him no heed, finally drawing her dagger from its sheath. The man squared up, still shaking with rage. Reijou didn't point her dagger at the man. Instead, she grabbed at her dress and plunged the blade into the skirts, tearing a long slit into the side. Reijou stood before the astonished man and smiled. "There, that should make movement easier." "Let me make a suggestion," she said. "Give up now," the man grunted. He was one of Theodore's soldiers, he couldn't disobey. She had no choice but to take care of him. Leaving him unconscious, she sighed. "He said that there's 6 on the 2nd floor and 10 more on the ground." Reijou descended the stairs, leaving 5 fallen men in her wake. Chapter 5. Theodore confronted his brother in a modest room on the outskirts of the capital. The crown prince sat in a chair, chin propped on one hand. Theodore read no emotion in his face, but he still appeared to be in a bad mood. "I'm so happy you came all the way here to see me," Theodore welcomed his brother. Arnold said nothing. Theodore did not allow this to dampen his high spirits. "And without any guards, too. Such a delight, considering how you always ignore my invitations. How long has it been since we last sat down to talk like this?" "This might be the first time ever." Theodore cackled loudly, and then his face twisted into a grimace. "I guess that means you must be doing this for her sake." Even saying the words made a hot pulse of rage streak through his chest. Finally, Arnold spoke. "You're wasting my time. Get on with it already. Rude. Shouldn't you be showing me some brotherly love? Why would I do that?" "I have no reason to speak to you," Theodore tutted. "Don't you understand you're in no position to argue? I've abducted your favorite woman." I was expecting at least a smidgen of panic. "Or don't you care about her at all?" He knew the answer, but he said it anyway. Anything to provoke his brother. When I learned of his betrothal, I thought it a farce. That he'd done it on father's orders. The emperor had been pushing his son toward a political marriage for months, ordering him to bring home a foreign princess. All royal marriages were coordinated political moves. Theodore's late mother had been the princess of a once thriving nation brought under Galkine's rule. When word of Arnold journeying home with some random woman spread, Theodore naturally assumed the crown prince was just following orders. He'd begun to rethink that, however, when a messenger arrived ahead of Arnold's return with orders for a cotter of maids to serve his fiancée. Theodore took that opportunity to sneak Elsie in among the potential servants, learning that his brother planned to prepare the detached palace for his bride and move in with her when all was ready. This was not a man who was marrying a woman in name only. "I'm jealous of her." "Of course I am." He'd never received a moment of kindness from his brother. Arnold had even gone so far as to order Theodore to stay away from his bride, not even allowing him to greet her. When Theodore heard that she'd been allotted an herb garden, he'd wanted to trample it to death. He restrained his childish envy and managed to just take a nap instead. He could use her, and he had. Finally, Arnold was here. Arnold was speaking to him. "What you're doing is pointless," Arnold declared, his expression oddly cool for a man whose fiancée had been taken prisoner. "Pointless?" Theodore snickered. "I know you view me as a stranger with no strategic value. But now you must acknowledge at least this, that I can hurt you." He copied his brother's posture, propping up his chin in a mirror image. "As you well know, what I want is your throne, the seat of the crown prince." Had his brother guessed that this was his price? Or was Theodore so irrelevant in his eyes he hadn't even bothered to wonder at his motives? Arnold's face revealed nothing. He glared at me so coldly that night at the chapel. Why won't he do it again? Arnold wouldn't give a damn about a challenge to his succession. Reijou was his only weakness, and Theodore held her life in his hands. He stood up, continuing his threats. "Are you listening? If you want your bride returned to you unharmed, you'll abdicate in my favor. Otherwise, I can't promise you her continued well-being." He was met with silence. "You care about her. You're playing it cool, but I know you're terrified." Theodore took a single step toward him. "She means a lot to you, doesn't she? Far more than the brother you loathe the sight of and the sisters you sent away. You cherish her and you want her by your side. I completely understand that. I know you, I've been watching you for a long time." Another step. Theodore was inching closer than his brother had ever allowed him. "And right now, the life of the woman you care so much about is in my hands. You're very worried, aren't you? You must be on pins and needles. The fact that you came here so late at night without an escort is proof of that." His vision wavered. He felt almost lightheaded as he stood over his brother, voice rising to a screech. "Come on, say something already. Admit I won this round. Say well played, Theodore, and give me your title." Theodore smacked a hand against his chest. "That's all I need. Give me this and I'll be happy for the rest of my life." A long silence hung between them. Then his brother finally said, "Theodore." Theodore was overjoyed to hear his brother say his name, but still there was nothing on his face. No fury or contempt, not even mild dislike. "Why not?" Arnold smiled slowly, leisurely, like he had all the time in the world. Certainly not like he felt threatened. "Very well, I'll play along for the moment. You claim that you've locked her up somewhere. Tell me, is it a prison?" "What?" Theodore snapped, annoyed. He wasn't that stupid. He hadn't put her in somewhere as mundane as a prison. The city prisons were under the jurisdiction of the knights. Surely Arnold would have searched them all. His brother already knew the answer, so why was he bothering to ask? Theodore replied snidely, "I put her in a cramped, dirty room. She won't escape. It's basically an isolated cell, locked from the outside." "My, so you locked it," Arnold said. "What else?" "I posted some ruffians to guard her. They are armed. Her room is up high, so she can't jump out of the window. If she tries to scream for help, the guards will silence her in an instant." "Oh, there's even a window." Arnold's arch tone just wound Theodore up further. "Did you hear a word I said? There's no way she can jump from a window that high." "Is that what you think?" "Yeah, it is. And even if she did somehow manage to get out, my guards will capture her." He couldn't believe he had to explain this, it was so obvious. Nevertheless, his brother showed no sign of losing his composure. "Normally, I'd agree with you. What the heck was he talking about?" Theodore's irritation was beginning to shade over into anxiety. What if he'd made a miscalculation when choosing her as his hostage? No way. It can't be. Theodore knew he'd interpreted his brother's feelings correctly. He did care about Reijou. It was plain as day in his gaze when he looked at her. So why wasn't he angry? Why wasn't he looking at Theodore with hatred and showering him with scathing words? "Maybe I'll cut off a finger," Theodore mused. "Show you I mean business. It's not too late for that, you know. The guards will hurt her on my command, I promise you that, my foolish little brother." Arnold smiled with disdain. Theodore had just thrown everything he could to make Arnold react, but this wasn't what he wanted. His brother was looking at him with pitying contempt for his foolishness, not because the capture of his bride had left him helpless. You already lost, Theodore. The second you thought you'd captured her, you'd already lost. What? Arnold glanced at the door. Azai, she's decided to join us. What the hell is wrong with you? You're being absolutely ludicrous. The door flew open with a bang. Theodore let out a shout. That door was locked. He was sure of it. Nevertheless, it was standing open. No, that's impossible. In the threshold stood a girl with coral-colored hair. She had a dagger in her hand and was spreading out the ragged skirts of her dress. His brother's fiancée, the beautiful Reijou, looked at him, smiled, and hooked a piece of hair behind her ear. Good evening, Prince Theodore. I'm here to settle this. Theodore shrank back. This can't be happening. Don't tell me Elsie was moved by her kindness. But that still doesn't make sense. I put Hugo and his men at the door. They would never betray me or allow Elsie to either. Reijou ignored his sputtering, her gaze shifting to the right. Prince Arnold, it was almost awkward the way she said his name. A furtiveness to her expression. Theodore knew these two hadn't seen one another since that night in the chapel. He didn't know what had happened between them, but Arnold was regarding her coolly. I'm sorry for my idiot brother ruining your night, he said. Oh, it's all right. Theodore was just telling me about the room where he locked you up. Did you jump out the window? Or just make a hole in the wall? I have no idea what you mean. I left through the door like any normal person would. Arnold laughed. You left like any normal person would leave a locked cell watched by armed guards. Reijou looked troubled but less nervous than before. Not that any of that mattered to Theodore. Who the hell are you? He clenched his fists. How did you get here? How did you escape, Prince Theodore? Someone must have betrayed me. That's the only explanation. What was the point of doing all that if, Your Highness? With all due respect, I'd love to offer you a few words of advice. Reijou's face had gone cold. Theodore flinched away at her intensity. He couldn't help it, even if she was only an ignorant noblewoman, someone the same age as him. Advice, first of all, Reijou put up a finger. Don't let a prisoner of war out of your sight. You mustn't leave them alone, even in a locked room. If you can't be there yourself, post guards inside the room with them. At least two. What are you talking about? Prisoners of war, he blurted. A normal noblewoman would never say something like this. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Second, Reijou raised another finger. Always search your captive for weapons more than once. If you have an underling frisk a prisoner, you should do the final check yourself. Reijou moved toward him, nonchalant, crowding Theodore up against the wall. She flipped her dagger from hand to hand. Where had she even gotten that? Honestly, you shouldn't leave them clothed, strip them completely. That way they won't be able to hide any weapons or tools to aid their escape. This is especially important if the prisoner is a woman. If she's indecent, she'll feel she can't run away and she'll be afraid to try. The words fell from her red lips with a casual air, as if this was only common sense. She then held up 3 fingers. Third, you neglected to bind my hands and feet. When you do bind a prisoner, make sure they are in handcuffs and that the base of their thumbs is tied off with a durable rope. As for their ankles, I imagine this goes without saying, but it's best to fasten them to a pillar or a bed, something solid. Her long-lashed eyes pierced Theodore. Her face was as pretty as a doll's, but alight with something fierce and fearsome. He couldn't look away. But even with all of that, it's still half-hearted. Do you know how best to ensure someone can't run away? Reijou leaned in. How? You break their arms and legs. Theodore swallowed hard. Was she serious? His back hit the wall, Reijou leaning in close as she said matter-of-factly, those 3 actions are a sure thing. Broken bones, secure bonds, everything confiscated. Oh, and always post guards in groups. That's the only way to guarantee your prisoner won't escape you. Or probably won't. You have to prepare for any eventuality. What in the world is wrong with this girl? Theodore recognized the look in her eyes. He would never forget it. He'd seen it in the eyes of wounded soldiers when he'd treated their injuries on the front lines. Escaped enemies will have information about your position and the makeup of your army. They will endanger you and your allies. Civilians, you must always do what is necessary to ensure a captive can't slip your grasp. Oh, wait. I was wrong. She had the eyes of a sawlighter standing on the battlefield, sword in hand. Just as he was sure of it, Reijou asserted, that is what is required when you capture an enemy. A chill ran down Theodore's spine. Reijou, who had no idea what she was doing to him, smiled bashfully. At least that's how I learned it from a book. You went too easy on me, considering you were trying to threaten Arnold with my well-being. You even told them not to be rough with me. How? I know I'm talking too much. But I still haven't told you the most important thing. I will be keeping how I escaped a secret. Oh, a big hand grabbed Reijou by the shoulder, pulling her backward. Behind her stood Theodore's brother, looking consternated. Reijou looked up at him. Your Highness, why are you giving the person who captured you a flawless method of keeping someone restrained? Arnold asked as he draped his jacket over Reijou's shoulders. That was when Theodore noticed that her dress wasn't just ragged, it was torn all the way from waist to hem. Reijou looked flustered. Your Highness, you mustn't. I'm fine, please keep your jacket on. I'm not cold. You wear it, but your scars. Before Reijou even spoke, Theodore's gaze had locked on Arnold's shoulders. What are those wounds? On Arnold's body were countless scars. They were old, but he could tell they had been deep. When was he injured? I had no idea that happened to him. He must have been hiding it. But she knew. That was when Theodore understood. She really is better than me. He clenched his teeth. He doesn't tell me his secrets. He doesn't trust me. I know that, and yet I can't help how I feel. He thought back to several years ago when Galkeen was still at war. Theodore signed up as a battlefield medic, working at a first aid station where the injured were transported. By mutual agreement of both sides, it was designated as a safe zone. Someone attacked anyway. They were brigands rather than soldiers. They'd looked feverish, intent, rendered destitute by the war. They'd shouted at the medics to hand over their medical supplies, valuables, and food, menacing them with blades. Those who could flee did so, leaving the ruffians to target the most severely wounded. Theodore had tried to run as well, but then he'd realized something. He recognized their attackers. They were men from the slums. The realization rooted him to the spot, and then he'd reflexively run to them. Theodore had grown up ignored by his father and constantly compared to his prodigy brother. He knew these people. They'd smiled at him as he went about his charity work the way his father never had. They'd worried for him in place of his late mother. They were dear to him. He refused to fight. He might be injured. He might even lose his life. He squeezed his eyes shut, but the moment he'd feared never came. Instead, he had heard a hoarse scream. When Theodore opened his eyes, he saw his brother, back to him, wielding his sword. Brother, he forced the word out around the fear. His brother slowly turned. A crimson arc was painted across his face, arterial spray from the man whose throat he'd cut. Red droplets dripped down to the ground. The crown prince's expression didn't change as he surveyed the bodies at his feet. He wiped at the blood on his face with a cuff, careless. For a moment, Theodore was sure his brother would kill him as well. After all, he could count on one hand the number of times they'd spoken in living memory. His beautiful, terrifying brother. The stranger. Theodore knew of Arnold's achievements on the field and of his cruel nature that didn't bother to distinguish between friend or foe. He was paralyzed with fear. But after a moment, his brother withdrew his icy gaze and said, "You did well." Huh. Theodore was dumbfounded, unable to comprehend what his brother could mean. Arnold didn't meet his eyes. Despite your trembling, you were right to protect our subjects. It's hardly a royal's job, but an admirable deed as a lord nonetheless. Theodore was at a loss for words. Next time, don't risk your own life, Arnold said gently. But you should be proud of how quickly you acted. Arnold had been watching him. He had been watching Theodore, the child who couldn't wield a sword and could only assist in the camp. It made him indescribably happy to know this. Back in the present, Theodore glared at Reijou, who wore his brother's black jacket on top of her dress. I adore my brother, and that's why I cannot permit this. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but if I must, I don't care. I'll die. I'll die if it will hurt him. I'll kill her. I'll kill her, and then my brother will hate me. Trying to kill me would be an exercise in futility, Reijou said. He flinched. Was she reading his mind? Under normal circumstances, he could have hidden his disquiet, but his mind felt storm-tossed. Her manipulations had left him utterly lost. I know I said I was here to settle this, but I'm not going to fight you, she added. I entreat you to tell me your goal. Theodore scowled. Isn't it obvious? I want to be the next emperor. Why else do princes fight? Reijou shook her head. I don't think that's true. I beg you to take this chance to explain yourself to us both. He would never tell her. He refused to tell her. However, Theodore's determination was immediately overruled. Your true objective is to wear the stigma of a heinous criminal, Reijou guessed. You want people to believe you a usurper. You don't actually want the throne, Arnold frowned. Theodore was even more surprised. How does she know? He nearly blurted the question out loud, but he didn't dare let his brother hear it. What are you talking about? He snapped. Nobody commits crimes simply to become a criminal. Well, I suppose calling it your true objective is misleading. But let's assume your goal is what happens after you are named an enemy of the state. It had to be just a random guess, but Reijou sounded so sure of herself. I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. Why would you go after me of all people? But this theory explains that and everything else. How? I told you already, I did it to hurt my brother. Theodore forced a smile. You're just dismissed as a hostage inside the palace, but the nation will celebrate you as the crown prince's bride. And my brother's reputation would be ruined if he failed to protect you. Theodore didn't dare look at Arnold. He couldn't risk him seeing how shaken he was. You were far more useful than I could ever have predicted. That's why I chose now to make my move. I was going to threaten Arnold with your safety and force him to give up his line in the succession. To outsiders, my only value is that I'm the crown prince's fiancé. His position matters and nothing more, I suppose. You didn't possibly think it would work, did you? Reijou asked. Using me as a means to force His Highness to hand over his title. Her words were humble, but Reijou stood confidently. It didn't seem to bother her at all that other people saw her as worthless. I can say definitively that there was very little value in having me abducted. You're not stupid. Why did you bother? Was it just to annoy everyone? No, Theodore said, averting his eyes from Reijou. You've had next to no official duties as the second prince for the past few years, is that right? Reijou was right, much as he wanted to scoff. Theodore had resigned from his professional duties as an imperial prince. Everyone in the palace knew it, and that it was by his own choice. His every action was to cultivate a wild and uncontrolled persona so that when people spoke of him, they would say, "There goes the second prince, gallivanting around and sleeping in weird places again." I've had a look at the records. You stopped doing charity work in the slums 2 years ago. You've been going there to help out since you were very young. Why stop? Theodore shrugged. I lost interest in it. Charity work is boring. I'd rather nap or do anything else. Another lie, said Reijou. You haven't ever stopped. I saw no traces of public funds being moved. I assume you've used your own. How many records did she read? To a certain extent, records were available to the public in the palace library. They contained what could be called history books at this point, all the way to very recent public finances. Anyone who worked in the palace could read them. But they only listed superficial information. Perhaps one could draw the conclusions Reijou had through careful scrutiny, but not if you didn't know what you were looking for. Just who in the world is this woman? Reijou continued, you've made every effort to support the people of the slums. you are on very amicable terms. Why, I hear you even took care of an orphan while they were sick, never leaving their side for a moment, holding their hand. Once, you arranged a doctor for a woman who had no one to support her during childbirth, staying with her to offer words of encouragement. You nap all day because you are out all night. It almost sounded like she had seen him do this for herself. Theodore started laughing. Ha ha ha. You make me out to be quite the saint. But service works both ways. I helped them so they would help me. Those thugs did indeed seem to be under your control. They are willing to do anything for money. I courted them to use them, that's it. They are under your protection then, said Reijou. You take the criminally desperate under your wing so they'll have food to eat tomorrow. Am I getting that right? Theodore made a strangled noise in his throat. Reijou continued to gaze at him. You have affection for the people in the slums. You wish to save them, but you know you lack the power. What I don't understand is why you feel like you have to do it under the table. Why shirk your duties? Because Theodore's voice stuck. His heart was beating painfully. His brother's gaze scared him. Was Arnold becoming aware of his plot? Theodore couldn't bear to look at him. I don't think you want to be a prince, Reijou went on. I think you'd prefer to abdicate. Or rather, force yourself from the succession with a desperate plot to kill your brother's fiancée. As if. I just want what's his. If that were true, you'd go after Prince Arnold directly, not through me. You must have had countless chances before I arrived. Theodore sucked in a breath. Reijou ignored him. But you never tried to hurt him, did you? I believe that everything you do, every choice you make, is for your brother's sake. No. The ground seemed to writhe and contort beneath his feet. His heart pounded in his chest, dizziness crowding his mind. Theodore screamed, the world bucking under him. That's not true. No, you're wrong. Why do you keep talking? All Theodore could do was deny everything she said. He didn't care if Arnold was here, he couldn't let her be right. Fine if you have to know. I want my brother to hate me. I want him to shun me, to loathe me, to get rid of me. If he can't accept me like he's accepted you, then I'd rather just die. Prince Theodore, when he looks at me in anger, I'm so happy. I delight in his disdain. That's why I did this. That's all, Your Highness. Shut up. Reijou's voice was repulsively gentle. What are you afraid of? What kind of question is that? It's like she thinks she's on my side. Reijou was looking at him in puzzlement, brows pinched. Slowly she said, perhaps you and I fear the same future. He couldn't imagine this woman fearing anything. What, Reijou? Theodore stiffened at the sound of his brother's voice. That's enough. Don't say anything else, but Your Highness, I told you not to speak to him, Arnold said. A bead of sweat ran down Theodore's neck. Nerves crowded his throat, and stinging pain writhed in his chest. Your Highness, wait, Reijou said urgently. I need to understand. It doesn't matter. He'll just lie to you. Theodore winced at the apathy in Arnold's voice, though it didn't come as a surprise. Did she truly work it all out? He was paralyzed, his brother's voice driving in the knife and twisting. I don't care what he wants, it doesn't concern me. Theodore made a choked noise and bolted for the door. Prince Theodore, Black Knight crowded the window. The echoes of Theodore's footsteps grew gradually distant. Reijou rounded on Arnold. Why are you doing this? Why do you keep pushing him away? Arnold looked at her as if all this was stupid. Didn't I tell you? I don't care about him, Your Highness, don't worry. I'll send him away if he tries anything else, Arnold said. He can live elsewhere like my sisters. That's not what I'm worried about. He knew that, which meant he was stonewalling. I won't let you get away. Reijou understood that Arnold's decisions were momentous. One day he would influence the whole world. He would go to war with every nation, trampling them down and consuming them with overwhelming might. In her past 6 lives, there had not been a single person who didn't know his name. By the same token, it was unlikely to the extreme that she'd never heard the name of his little brother, Theodore August Hein. She hadn't thought it unusual at first. Court intrigue wasn't widely circulated into the international sphere. At most there would be rumors. It wouldn't be that unusual for a mere merchant or apothecary to never hear them. But now she was sure that couldn't possibly apply to Theodore without his active attempt to keep himself off the world stage. Coupled with this night's strange performance, it was obvious. Your brother is trying to erase himself from Galkeen's future. He considers that a greater priority than the people of the slums. And I'm pretty sure it's because of you, Your Highness. It had to be. Theodore prioritized Arnold above all else. So what? Remember how you said the other day that I don't need to be resolute in becoming your wife? Saying it out loud made her heart hurt. Curious that. I have been mulling over what you meant ever since. One of my guesses is directly tied to Prince Theodore's behavior. Her first idea was that he meant they'd be divorced at some point, but if not, Arnold was telling her that he already had plans to kill his father in 3 years and start the war. And if Theodore knew about this plan, if he guessed what his brother intended to do, you're planning to completely destroy everything, aren't you? Reijou asked. You're going to discard your future. Arnold stared at her with cold eyes. That's what Prince Theodore fears, isn't it? And that's why he's behaving like a willful child with no aptitude for leadership. He doesn't want you to leave him the throne. When Arnold said nothing, she prodded, well, Reijou was taking a gamble. She needed to know whether the cruel Emperor Arnold Hein existed yet, somewhere inside him. Just let me in, just the smallest bit. I can still change the future. Arnold possessed compassion like any decent person. Reijou fully believed he did not intend to start a war. She watched him unwaveringly, waiting for him to answer. Arnold was silent for what felt like eons before he said, "Oh, I understand now." There was no trace of anger in his voice. Relief flooded Reijou until she saw Arnold's expression. She gasped. I'm sure of it. He gave her a challenging grin. A dark, chilling glint grew in his eyes. It made Reijou shiver. What's that supposed to mean? This was not the response Reijou was expecting. Not that provocative grin, not that cold look, nor those words. You know, he smiled at her bewilderment. You're adorable, what? I know being unsure of my intentions is distressing you, Arnold said. But you don't need to know. Feel free to continue theorizing, though. So, Arnold refused to reveal anything to Reijou. Perhaps it had been naive of her to imagine he ever would. She pursed her lips, thinking. Over the past few weeks living in the palace, she'd truly thought she was coming to know him. I've been arrogant. I don't know him at all. Arnold's smile was gone, replaced with that bored, blank look. I'll say it again, just ignore Theodore. But, as for what you were saying, you're right that I'm laying plans for the event of my death. That's only what's expected of me. I can't make policies that can be undone just because I pass away. He was denying Reijou's conjecture. With her current hand, Reijou couldn't refute him. Perhaps Theodore has read my actions wrong, he went on. But he's a fool. This was a truly ridiculous gambit for a prince. Then, in a considerably harsher tone, my brother shouldn't associate with someone like me. Reijou gawked at him in astonishment. Was this finally a glimpse into why Arnold kept his brother at a distance? Why he refused to interact with him, turned around when he saw him coming? You really do love him, what? Arnold knit his brows, but he didn't correct her. If he were truly apathetic, he wouldn't have said something like that. Your Highness, have you ever heard the saying, if you love somebody, set them free? Constant guidance and assistance can be detrimental rather than helpful. Something else Reijou could claim she read in a book, when in reality a fellow knight had once told her that, smiling ruefully as he spoke. Perhaps that's why you keep him at a distance. Interesting. Do you honestly believe that? I do. I don't know where you draw your lines, nor do I understand your tactics. But I know for certain that you are not made of stone. His rebuke had made her falter, but she was not yet at the point where she would fully discard her conclusions. Despite what she knew of the future him, the monster and the warmonger, Reijou now knew that he was human. Your Highness, may I ask, you appear to be preparing for a future where you yourself are out of the picture, but have you ever considered the reverse? The reverse, a future without Prince Theodore. You can't predict when someone will die. Reijou had no idea what would happen to Theodore within the next 5 years. Perhaps in his other lives, he had merely continued down his path of obscurity. But what if he had launched a rebellion against Arnold and been punished accordingly? It was not outside the realm of possibility that his brother had killed him. Reijou gazed steadily into Arnold's eyes. I urge you to live your life without regrets, that's all. That was how Reijou was trying to live her own life, even if she did end up dying in 5 years. And if this loop was the one where she finally broke the cycle, her final chance, well, she wouldn't regret that either. So that was what she said to him. I am going to strive to live this life as your wife without any regrets. Reijou turned her back on Arnold and left him. Theodore's footsteps had been heading up the stairs rather than outside, she was sure of it. In the now empty room, Arnold muttered, "Damn it all." Reijou headed up the stairs in pursuit of Theodore. This building appeared to have once been an inn, and she sensed no one else inside but the three of them. They were on the 3rd floor, Theodore seemed to be on the 4th and still climbing. Catching up, Reijou found the doors to the roof left open. She stepped out into what once must have been a space for hanging laundry. She pictured the tableau of dozens of sheets softly fluttering in the wind. Tonight all was silent. Theodore stood under the spill of a starry sky. Prince Theodore, he flinched like a scolded child, then turned back to her with a pout. Oh, do you have another lecture prepared? Perhaps on running away. Should I have run down and out instead of up? I know you weren't trying to run away. If he wanted to escape, he would have just left. Theodore huffed. I wanted to speak without my brother present. I've shamed myself enough as it is. The prince strode over to the roof's edge, propping himself up against the railing. His eyes were wide and earnest. Gone was the petulant look of a boy intent on dodging his truths. You know, my brother doesn't ever take credit for the brilliant policy changes he makes to improve our country. Theodore smiled. Eventually the citizens find out, though. But they never say. Or they credit our father. His sleek hair fluttered in the wind. On the other hand, there's an unnatural number of rumors about my brother. Do you know what I'm talking about how cruel he was during the war? Exactly, Theodore said. You're from another country, you'll have heard all about it. Why do you think the crown prince of the victorious nation is infamous everywhere? The answer he was looking for was obvious. Because Prince Arnold himself intended for such rumors to spread. Theodore nodded. That's what I think too. He hides his meritorious deeds and spreads the contemptible. He's ruining his own reputation. I can't imagine he intends to participate in politics for much longer. And there's more, he slowly shut his eyes. He has no attachment to his position as crown prince. He's arranging his affairs so that he can disappear whenever he wants to. I know I'm right, I've watched him for so long. Reijou said nothing. I don't know the next phase of his plans, but we can't let him just disappear. He's too important. Don't you agree? Theodore had no idea what kind of future Arnold would choose. He had no way of knowing that Arnold wasn't planning to step down from politics. He was going to incite a massacre. But Theodore's sense of impending crisis was spot on. Everything I've done has mimicked his moves, Theodore said. If he plans to entrust the nation to me and then disappear, then I'll disappear first. I'll save him from his own stupidity. He gazed at Reijou with the eyes that matched his brother's, then smiled gently. This is the only kindness I can offer him. Reijou had so many things she wanted to share. And to ask, why are you telling me all this? Because just now you said that we're afraid of the same thing. Assuming you've figured out what I'm thinking, you're afraid of him disappearing too. I suppose that makes sense. Your position as his wife would be in jeopardy if something happened to him. On the contrary, but Reijou kept that to herself. She couldn't tell him she knew his brother would kill her in 5 years. I thought it would be worth confirming your fears. His gaze went flinty. Maybe I could finally frighten you off. Another roundabout motive. This was getting annoying. Reijou wished these brothers would tone down the emotional manipulation. Don't look at me like that. You stole my beloved brother from me. I'm allowed my revenge. Not that he was ever very brotherly to me. But I'll still be gratified if this leaves you hopeless of ever preventing the future you fear. May I get a word in? Reijou asked, just as a strong gust of wind blew across the rooftop. She clutched Arnold's jacket to her shoulders so it wouldn't fly away. I won't be afraid of the future anymore. Theodore looked at her with surprise. Reijou felt as if the ground were contorting under her feet. The medicine's wearing off. I just need a little bit longer. Your brother must be planning something momentous. I intend to use all my power and every means at my disposal to stop him. She took a deep breath and balanced herself, trying not to wobble. I won't hesitate. I will take all the help I can get, no matter what debts I incur. One can't be picky when faced with an opponent like him. She pierced him with her gaze. Naturally, that includes you, me. Theodore swiftly covered his confusion with a sneer. Such confidence. My brother truly chose well. But I don't think you'll be able to stop him. Nothing I say will influence him. The most I can do is obstruct his plans. That's what you've been doing for the past 2 years, am I right? Putting your own position at risk, dirtying your hands. But if you truly wish to help your brother, I suggest focusing on your own life. On what makes you happy. What? This time Theodore couldn't downplay the bafflement. Why is my happiness related to his future? Prince Arnold would not wish for a future in which you were unhappy. That doesn't make sense. Of course it does, Reijou said. You're the only brother he has. Theodore stared at her. Why do you think Prince Arnold came here alone in the middle of the night? To save you. Obviously, His Highness knows I wouldn't go quietly. And that I can save myself, and he knew that Theodore wouldn't treat Reijou cruelly. If you had been anyone else, I am sure Prince Arnold wouldn't have come. He's the crown prince. He can't rashly follow the directions of kidnappers. He came here because it was a demand from his little brother, nothing more. Stop it. I don't need to hear this from you, Prince Theodore said, voice strangled. Are you trying to say that he loves me? That's ridiculous. I've learned not to hope for such things. Prince Theodore, he doesn't spare me a single thought. Even our father hates me. I've done nothing to earn his respect. But it's fine, Theodore sighed and smiled. Brother saved me once. I owe him my life. I doubt he even remembers it. He looked over his shoulder, gazing beyond the railing. It's my own choice what I do with my life. Reijou made a questioning noise. I should have skipped the schemes and done this sooner. I can't believe how badly I screwed up. Reijou shuddered as she realized what Theodore had come up here to do. With an almost playful smile, he began to lean backward against the railing. Your Highness, don't do this. Reijou lurched over to him, her vision wavering as she fell. Why now of all times? She couldn't even muster the strength to get back on her feet. Her head pounded like a struck bell. Theodore looked down at her with a satisfied smile. Thank you, sister. I wasn't expecting your concern to make me happy, but it does. Wait, she desperately reached out her hand, even though he was meters away. Don't, a shadow rushed past her. The figure grabbed Theodore by the arm, yanking him off the railing. Theodore gasped in recognition. Brother, he gazed up at Arnold, stupefied. Arnold's back was turned to Reijou, so she couldn't make out his expression. Still, what he did next surprised her. Smack! Arnold grabbed Theodore by the collar and slapped him across the face. What the hell were you thinking? Reijou had never heard Arnold shout like that before. Theodore pressed a hand to his cheek, gaping up at his brother. Theodore's voice was choked down to nothing. This is it. This is the only way I can help you. I'll never matter to you, don't be a fool. Arnold's tone was frigid. What kind of idiot would throw his life away for someone who has never done a single thing to earn his esteem? Despite his words, Reijou was sure of her conclusions. Arnold kept Theodore at a distance out of love. Don't do something like this for my sake, Arnold growled. Theodore was about to say something, but he gave up, on the verge of tears. Reijou sighed in relief, forcing herself to her feet. You're right, Your Highness. That was stupid. Arnold slowly looked back at her. Enduring her throbbing headache, Reijou said, the feeling behind it is real. It's not foolish for him to want to help his older brother. Her breath shook, going shallow. Isn't that right, Prince Theodore? Theodore now sat on the ground, clenching his fist. She's right, Arnold blinked. What are you? It's all I've ever wanted. Theodore's numb confusion was gone, replaced by determination. I want to stand by you. I want you to need me. If there's any way I can help you, I'll do it no matter what. His eyes, the same eyes, pierced Arnold's. Because you're my only brother and I care about you. Arnold didn't reply. Reijou wished she could see his face. She watched them both attentively. Before long, Arnold released Theodore's collar and slowly stood back up. Don't ever do something stupid like this again. Theodore grimaced as his brother pushed him away once more. Reijou's heart ached as she realized these two might never understand each other. But what Arnold said next surprised her. I'm pretty sure I've told you this once before, don't put your life in danger needlessly. Theodore's voice trembled as he asked, you remember that day? Of course I do. Theodore choked, tears welling up in those big eyes to trail down his cheeks. His voice quivered. I'm sorry, he repeated himself over and over through his tears. I'm so sorry, brother. I'm so sorry, sister. I'm so sore. Arnold looked at an utter loss. Okay, we get it already. Stop crying, but Reijou felt light with relief. Thank goodness. Theodore's crying face was that of a small child who had finally plucked up the courage to make amends. If he can cry like that, he'll be all right. Arnold turned to Reijou and knelt down beside her. Are you hurt? I knew you would come, Your Highness. I came because of something you said. She wondered what it was. That Theodore might disappear from Arnold's life. Perhaps it had sounded like a threat, even if Reijou had been speaking metaphorically. I'm glad you two have made up. Arnold stood in silence and held out his gloved hand to Reijou. She smiled as she took it. The taut string of tension that had been keeping her on her feet slackened. I'm really Reijou. The strength left her and she finally lost the fight against unconsciousness. Sister, Theodore cried out as Reijou fainted. Arnold caught her the moment she went limp. Theodore jumped to his feet and wiped away his tears with the cuff of his sleeve, hurrying over. Is she okay? She stumbled earlier, but a guard had told him she'd fainted in captivity. He'd taken it for an act. The possibility that it hadn't been filled him with horror. Oh no. Don't tell me it's because I locked her up. No, it's not. His brother seemed strangely calm as he looked down at Reijou in his arms and murmured, she's just sleeping. Wait, really? He took a closer look. It did indeed seem that she'd just fallen asleep. Now of all times, who the heck could fall asleep in a situation like this? Theodore was stunned, but his brother just laughed. He'd never seen a look like that on Arnold's face before, but it didn't hurt as much as he'd expected it to. He found this change in his heart curious. Theodore, his brother's voice pulled him out of his reverie. You have a carriage at the ready somewhere, right? Of course I do. He couldn't help his curtness, he wasn't used to speaking to Arnold. It's waiting for me not too far away. I'll go fetch it if you carry her. Thanks. Arnold easily lifted Reijou in both arms. I'll bring her to rest downstairs until it arrives. Okay. Theodore nodded, wiping away fresh tears threatening to spill. It was so strange to watch his solemn brother hold someone in his arms. Now alone on the rooftop, he murmured to himself, my brother's counting on me to do something. His cheek stung where Arnold had slapped him, but his chest was warm. I can't just keep standing around. After all, he couldn't squander this precious first. Theodore stood up and moved for the stairs, chasing the hours until dawn. When Reijou opened her eyes, she found herself in a patch of sunlight. To be more precise, she was in a bed bathed in light. Enveloped in silky sheets on a soft mattress, she felt as though she were in a dream. Distantly, she heard the comforting scratch of a pen. She listened to it, feeling sleepy again. Wait, a pen. Eventually, the strangeness hit her, and she lifted herself up. Arnold sat working at the desk. Arnold stilled his pen and gave her an amused smile. Oh. Finally awake, Prince Arnold. Reijou sat up with a bounce, hands planted behind her on the bed as she looked around wildly. You don't have to get up. Feel free to sleep a bit longer. You've only slept for half a day. What do you mean? This was her room in the detached palace, no doubt about it. To keep her from floundering, Arnold explained, you passed out on the rooftop of that building. I brought you here in Theodore's carriage, and I couldn't just leave you alone after all that. Your maids didn't know what happened, they wouldn't have known how to take care of you. Wait, don't tell me you've been here the whole time. Have you slept any yourself? I would have been awake anyway. I had work to finish. I'm so sorry I fainted. Reijou bowed as well as she could from a sitting position. She realized as she did that she was wearing a nightgown instead of her torn dress. Wait, why am I wearing this? Who changed my clothes? Don't worry. I had that maid come in. Elsie, I think her name was. Reijou sighed in relief, not even annoyed that he'd done his usual mind reading. She watched as Arnold stood up and came over to the bed. How are you feeling? He asked gently. Having him and his handsome face so close made her feel self-conscious. I'm fine now. Sorry to be a bother, I don't care as long as you recover. Arnold held out a letter to her. Reijou opened it to find familiar handwriting. It must have been from Theodore. Dear sister, I'd like to apologize for the terrible things I did. There are too many to count, but I'll do my best. I swear that someday I will repay my debt to you, and I'll lend you the aid of the people of the slums. If you can give the people of the Undercity a place to belong, then you can count on us whenever you need us. You better be grateful. Reijou smiled wryly. She appreciated the offer, but she'd prefer to never be in a position to require aid. P.S. Thank you. Reijou traced the letters with her fingertip. You and Prince Theodore had a talk, didn't you? Arnold frowned. What makes you say that? If you hadn't, you wouldn't be the one handing me this letter. Arnold said nothing, but his lack of denial made her sure she was right. The letter eased her mind, at least for now. Perhaps this was a small change in this life from the last 6, shrinking the distance between the two brothers. She couldn't prevent the happy grin from spreading over her face. Why are you smiling like that? Arnold asked. I'm pleased. Why wouldn't I want my husband on good terms with his family? Sometimes I think you're the strangest woman I've ever met, Arnold said, his eyes downcast, mouth softer than usual. That pleased her too. In fact, she was very happy with this whole turn of events. Arnold looked back up. I forgot to mention. Think up something that you want. A penalty, a what? Did he want to buy her something? I broke my promise again, he said. I touched you, you gave me permission at the party to touch you with gloves on, but this was different. What was he talking about? Reijou cocked her head, puzzled. He always wore black gloves. He was wearing them right now. Finally it hit her. Oh, he was talking about that night a week ago in the chapel. Arnold had been wearing gloves, but he hadn't touched her with his hands. Reijou's face burned. He touched me with his lips. I don't need anything. Flustered, she snatched the sheets to hide her face. Arnold's smile went distinctly sly. You could just tell me why, she trailed off. Why I did that, never mind. She did want to know, but she couldn't help denying it. That night had been weighing on her nerves increasingly ever since. It had made last night even more difficult. She'd resolved to speak to Theodore, but she'd frozen at the sight of Arnold. She'd been so relieved when he'd acted like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Maybe it didn't mean anything. Or maybe it did. I don't know. And that's why I've tried so hard not to think about it. Reijou, now what? Reijou revealed only her eyes for glaring. Arnold chuckled. I'm sorry about all the trouble my brother caused. Reijou could barely believe she was hearing this. Words spoken by a true older brother who felt a sense of responsibility and sympathy for his sibling. She wished Theodore could have heard. Reijou shook her head. It was no trouble at all. He'll be my little brother soon too. Arnold looked briefly surprised, then pleased. That's true, The burning flush had gone down, but Reijou's heart was still pounding. The feeling was strange. She wasn't sure if she liked it. In the grand scheme of things, today might be trivial. But it was with these little things, one after another, that she would change the future. Or so she prayed. That evening, Arnold's attendant, Oliver, rubbed his forehead in consternation as the prince summarized the day's events. So all that's really happened is Prince Theodore becoming Lady Reijou's ally, and that troubles you, you know it does. When Arnold didn't respond, Oliver dropped his voice to a murmur. Your brother is no ordinary prince. He is a king in his own right to the underclass, all those who flirt at the edges of legality and treason. So it would seem. What's more, the young women of the palace adore Lady Reijou. And now she has connections to the area trading company as well, which has been spreading its influence all over the world. She has the servants, a guild, your brother, and the people he commands. Oliver counted on his fingers the personal connections their future crown princess had made within the scant few weeks she had been in Galkeen. What else could she be doing other than building out her faction, a faction that could, in time, become a threat? Arnold did not appear concerned. So what? I far prefer this to my future wife finding herself alone and helpless. But your highness, Oliver bit off his entreaty. If Arnold was allowing it, he had his reasons. Resigned, Oliver heaved a sigh. Very well. All shall be as you will. Also, something arrived for you. He presented the prince with the letter. Arnold grimaced at the impression in the wax seal before breaking it and giving it a swift glance. He grunted and handed it back. Oliver bowed reverently as he accepted it, swiftly appraising himself of its contents. It was a missive from an individual of some importance from a distant place. Oh my, it opened with words of congratulations for Crown Prince Arnold on his betrothal, begging indulgence for the writer's inability to attend the wedding ceremony in the coming months. Instead, the letter writer intended to visit Galkeen before the ceremony with a gift. What now? Oliver rubbed at his temples. More trouble, that's what. To be continued. Bonus story. The lullaby of a heartbeat. Reijou worked swiftly and diligently in a bedchamber of the main palace. It was the middle of the afternoon, but the thick navy blue curtains kept the room dim. She was setting up the perfect environment for a quiet sleep. I've lit some calming perfumed oils, and the temperature in the room seems fine. It's a bit too bright for sleeping, but I'm sure it won't be much of a bother with the canopy shut. She wasn't preparing these chambers for herself, however. She looked toward the room's owner and smiled. Now then, your highness. Rest as much as you need to. I'll stay as long as you want me. From the bed, Arnold scowled. The previous day, Reijou had been abducted and imprisoned by Theodore, staying up all night. The two brothers had managed to settle some of their differences, and she had fallen asleep from relief. Awakening just 30 or so minutes ago, she learned that Arnold had been up even longer, staying by her side the whole time. She had thanked him and urged Arnold to rest as well, but then he had shocked her by saying, "I'll stay up until nightfall." Reijou was dumbstruck by his disregard. But you've been up for nearly 2 days. Don't tell me you've got a pile of work from yesterday. Oh, I finished all of that while you were asleep, he said, so nonchalant about important matters of state. If he didn't have to work, why wouldn't he rest? When Reijou asked, he answered, because I can't sleep during the day. I can hear everyone moving around the palace. I can sense them. She knew what he was referring to, she had felt it before herself. On the battlefield, your senses sharpened and you'd sit bolt upright at the slightest presence. But that was just on the battlefield, Reijou reflected. Reijou had apothecary skills, and she couldn't just let him stay up the entire day because he couldn't fall asleep. Especially since it was for her well-being that he'd kept himself awake. She needed to repay the favor. Your Highness, she said to him out of curiosity, do you find it easier to sleep in a room with a consistent brightness rather than one where the lights are incessantly switching on and off? Well, yes. I suppose sensing a presence should be the same. Detecting someone moving around at a distance prevents a swordsman from their slumber. But if someone remains nearby, it will drown out everyone else and make it easier to fall asleep. Reijou put a hand to her chest as she spoke. Therefore, I shall lull you to sleep. After a long silence, Arnold said, What? And now here they were. Arnold lay in bed, pressing a hand to his forehead and saying, You are extremely bizarre. Must I remind you that you agreed to fulfill my wishes when you proposed to me? I'm taking advantage of your kindness for the good of your health. Her pride as an apothecary was at stake. Arnold opened his mouth to argue, apparently thought better of it, and returned his gaze to the canopy. Reijou placed a chair by the bed and sat down on it. Well, Can you sense anyone from a distance now? Arnold looked thoughtful. You're right that I'm focusing on you and not anyone else, yes. Well, that makes this suddenly more awkward. But at least her tactic worked. The perfumed oils would likely help as well. Close your eyes and sleep, she said in a whisper. To her surprise, Arnold obeyed. Reijou stayed as still as possible to avoid disturbing him. In her 5th life, she'd gotten good at sitting without movement for an extended period of time. She hoped he could at least get a short nap in. The gentle fragrance of the oils and a quiet, dim room. A bed fit for royalty. It should have been a more than suitable environment for someone who had stayed up all night. But 30 minutes later, Arnold let out a sigh. No good, it's the same thing as always. He didn't sound sleepy at all. Are you not tired enough to sleep? Your breathing sounds slower than normal. I'd much rather do something productive than just lie around wasting time. No. You can't get up, she pressed Arnold back down to the bed. I'm sure it must be because he can't stop thinking. It's hard to fall asleep when your body is tired, but your mind is still busy. I've got to find some way to distract him. Patience needed rest. Her former teacher would have scolded her if she allowed him to leave. She thought for a moment before she very quietly asked, "Shall I lie beside you for a bit?" Arnold looked briefly annoyed, but he agreed. He wasn't giving up yet for her sake. Relieved, Reijou clambered up and flopped right down beside him. The bed was soft and it didn't creak at all when she bounced on it. Arnold was suddenly so close, and the two of them gazed at each other. "Forgive me," Reijou said, slowly reaching out her hand, searching for Arnold's heartbeat. She patted his chest. Pat, 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 pat. She kept going. What in the world are you doing? It's a soothing method. You simulate a heartbeat. She had done it before for the young daughters of the family she served as a maid. It helps babies fall asleep. Babies, Arnold repeated. Silence fell between them, giving Reijou the time to reflect that comparing her fiancé to a baby was kind of rude. But he was just looking at her. You're the only one who'd ever dare to treat me like this. The tenderness in his voice lit a small fire in her heart, warmth spreading through her chest. What is this feeling? She wondered, but now wasn't the time to interrogate it. The prince lay on his back with his eyes closed. As she gazed at his handsome profile, she realized she could see the nape of his neck. Arnold typically kept his collar buttoned up, but right now he wore loose clothes, his numerous scars on display. If you're so curious about it, I won't stop you. Even with his permission, she still hesitated. Gently, she touched the scarring with her fingertips. She'd touched them before at the party through thin gloves. Feeling them now confirmed what she'd already known. Deep, knotted scars. Just before she died in her last life, she'd been able to land a single strike on Arnold because the scar tissue on his shoulder slowed the movement of his arm. It was his only weakness. Despite that, last night he took off the jacket he uses to hide them. He gave it to me. Reijou and Theodore had been the only ones there, but one never knew where enemies were lurking. He'd trusted them. Arnold's eyes were still closed. Even in the dim room, his profile was flawless. Not just his face, his prominent Adam's apple, his collarbone. The scars didn't mar his beauty at all. He looks like a work of art, but he's flesh and blood. Why was he so willing to let her touch a part he knew she could use against him? That's all she could think about as she caressed the scars with a smooth fingertip. Hey, he grasped her wrist with a big hand. Oh, his grip on her wrist wasn't tight, but he was frowning. What do you, sorry. Was I tickling you? She said, though she felt oddly reluctant to stop. Arnold's expression was briefly conflicted, before he grinned. I suppose I should have kept my gloves on. What? Why? He was about to go to sleep. Why would he need gloves? Arnold leaned close and whispered, "Then I could touch you back." Reijou's face burned. Gloves aren't a loophole, you know. Arnold's grin spread. I was just kidding. He then released her wrist. He'd been holding her over the sleeve of her dress, keeping his promise not to touch her after all. He's so honest. Or maybe faithful is the word. Where did that leave Reijou? It felt unfair that she could touch him without reciprocation. After a moment's contemplation, she reached for the thin ribbon at her collar and pulled it loose. And then she looked at Arnold. "Here, go ahead." Arnold's smile slid from his face. "Go ahead what? I touched your neck, so I thought fair is fair," Reijou explained quickly. It was just skin, but intentionally baring it to him made her feel well exposed. "But it was only right. Not that I think it's any compensation." She stared at the sheets rather than at him. "But feel free to take your revenge." Arnold silently reached behind himself and grabbed one of the numerous pillows on the bed. He placed it on Reijou's head. What's your angle? Hey. Wait. You're high." He pressed down to drown out her protests. He wasn't smothering her, but he was messing up her hair. "Your Highness," she finally threw the soft pillow off and gasped. Arnold's handsome face was right there. They were close enough for their noses to touch. He chuckled. That expression is more than enough compensation. Just what kind of face had she been making? She didn't have the strength to ask. She continued to gape at him, seeing relish written all over his face. "You're so strange. Being near my face bothers you, but hopping into my bed to sleep next to me doesn't," he pointed out calmly. The awkwardness of the situation was slowly dawning on her. She was losing control of this scene. "It's just," she hesitated. "I wanted to use a charm on you." "A charm?" Reijou nodded, took a deep breath, and reached toward Arnold where he lay on top of the soft sheets. She began patting him again to the rhythm of a heartbeat. Doing this to a child reminded them of hearing their mother's heartbeat in the womb, calming them down. "This palace isn't a battleground. It's your home, right?" She didn't know him well. For all she knew, Arnold might see the palace as a theater of war. But the thought of him not even being able to relax in his own bedroom saddened her. "I just want to help you sleep." Arnold didn't respond. Reijou had no memory of the time between falling asleep on the roof and waking in her bed, but she recalled her fear as the strength went out of her, cut with the relief of finding Arnold at her side, watching over her as she slept. In that moment, she felt safe. She meant to repay him for that peace however she could, even if it was a losing battle. Arnold continued to gaze at Reijou as she pondered this. In that case, he smoothed a strand of hair away from her cheek, careful not to touch her face. "You'll have to stay here with me until I fall asleep." Reijou looked back at him. "Are you sure I won't be a bother? I can concentrate on just you if you're here, right?" Slowly, Arnold shut his eyes once more, voice going husky with exhaustion. "I prefer your presence to being alone." Reijou smiled. "Okay." She didn't say anything after that, just kept beating out a heartbeat with her palm. Soon enough, Arnold's breaths went long and deep. His peaceful breathing was so pleasant that she found herself dozing off as well.